Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. As you can see, I have with me Lieutenant General PG Kamath, a renowned voice in terms of strategic affairs and understanding of strategic affairs happening around us. I'm going to actually take some time from him to understand the Ukraine war. There is a thought process which will say that the Ukraine war is a stalemate. Even if the Russians actually achieve their military objectives, this war will drag on and on and on in various different modes, hybrid, gray zone, so on and so forth. There are many more which are going to come out. The question that I would like to ask General Kamath is, does it call for us to relook at our conventional war-fighting methods, especially in urban areas? Sir, thank you so much for joining me. It's a very, very changing situation, and there are a lot of perspectives, and it'll be nice to hear yours on this very interesting subject.
Thank you, Aadi. Firstly, let me look at it. What are the political objectives, and why do we think it has brought down? Just to give you a past history, US-Vietnam War nearly 20 years, US-Afghan War in 20 years, then Soviet Union, Iraq, US-Iraq War, 8 years. Then the Soviet-Afghan War, 10 years. Iran-Iraq War, 8 years. To lose our patience in 80 days may not be fair to the Russians. Yes, I agree with you. The expectations were there that within a week or two, everything will be over and Russia will attain its political objectives. That was what was understood by the world over, because the force differential was so much, we thought it would be. But that was not to be. Why? First, let us see what were the political objectives of Russia. It calls it special military operations. When you have a political objectives, that dictate the military objectives. Agreed? When you pinpoint the military objectives, that determines how much force level is to be applied in order to capture the military objectives, which in turn give us the political objectives. So now let us see the political objective. One is to deter Ukraine from joining NATO. One is regime change. Third is liberate Donbas, the Russian-speaking areas, is a third political aim thought. And fourth, one of the most important thing is to dominate at least the north and northwestern portion of the Black Sea coast, which is the only warm water port for Russia. Now, if you see the Black Sea, it's very tragic. From the west, if you see Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, then you come to entire Turkey, which controls all the exit and entry points. Then go to east, it is Georgia, which is also trying to join NATO. So Russia is left with a very small portion. With the capture of Crimea in 2004, it has expanded. So one of the political objectives is also to see that it has got adequate domination for its Black Sea fleet, enough coast of Black Sea under its control. So I have given you 4 political objectives. As I told you, deter NATO, regime change, liberate Donbas, and increase its writ over the Black Sea. Now, if these are the political objectives, Aadi, what do you think are the military objectives? One is, if you really look at that it should deter, you have to have the center of gravity of entire Ukraine lies in Kiev. If it threatens or captures Kiev, that is an existential threat to Ukraine. So it is going to accede to you. If you really see the initial stages of the offensive, Zelensky first told that we are ready to be neutral. In the initial stages only, we are ready to be neutral, will not join NATO. That was the time, if his political objective was to deter Ukraine from joining NATO, Russia should have agreed at that point in time. It was to be done as a regime change. US did a regime change in 2014. Yanukovych was removed and Zelensky's predecessor was hoisted, who was pro-US. It can be done by intelligence operations. It can be done by elimination, liquidation of leadership, whatever. There are a number of ways which I do not want to elaborate. Even that could have been done. But still, sizable forces were employed at Kiev, because I do not think the political objectives were clearly these two, neither the regime change nor to deter Ukraine from joining NATO. This is outward. What is the next? Liberate the Donbas area, the Russian-speaking areas. This is the likely political objective. The reason being, before the start of the campaign, 2 days before, LPR and DPR, both the republics were recognized by Russia. So actually, Russia had given out its hands, which is my main objective, ground objective, which I have to capture, that is to liberate the eastern Ukraine from the rest of the country. Now, there is one more. Crimea is there. If another offensive will launch from Crimea, obviously the Kherson and Odessa can be captured easily. So he had two political objectives to my mind. One is the liberation of Donbas region, and also then the capture and to increase her coastline in the Black Sea and deprive Ukraine of a sea opening into the Black Sea. I will take it as that. So now he has to, now having these military objectives, he has to apply his force levels. Let us say he applied his force levels at only at Donbas and in Crimea. Then the entire Ukraine forces will straightaway come and oppose him. So when you have a main objective, you have to have a diversionary somewhere, so that all the forces in the western sector do not come and impede his move. And hence, as a diversionary, he put a considerable effort towards the Kiev. Once Kiev was threatened, the entire attention of Ukraine was towards the Kiev. The operation started on 24th. By 1st of March, they reached the outskirts of Kiev, and they remained there for next 1 month. Whereas their operations were starting at Donbas region, Mariupol, and Crimea had already started. Now, on 1st of April, after a 1 month of threatening Kiev, then he withdrew all the forces, which to my mind may not have been correct. Because once the pressure on Kiev was released, Zelensky and Ukrainians thought it is a moral victory. We have defeated him. We have pushed him aside. And his stance got hardened because there was no existential threat to Ukraine. You see how the things are played. Looking from the Russian side, because it was a diversionary, he could have sustained that threat for a longer time. But due to paucity of troops, probably, he had to pull out his forces to reinforce his main sector, that is the Donbas region and the Crimean region. So he withdrew the forces and in turn told Belarus to increase the concentration of the force levels on Ukraine-Belarus border, so that the entire forces of Ukraine is not pulled out to oppose his offensive in the Donbas and Crimea. So there was so to hint that Ukrainians pushed Russians out is probably, it's a good psychological warfare which the West played. It was also a moral victory for the Ukrainians to show that we never let the Kiev fall to the enemy and we pushed the Russians out. But there was something more which was being planned by Putin in order to capture the eastern portion. Now, why? From the eastern portion, northeast Ukraine to Moscow is only 400 odd kilometers. It is so near. And they have also heard, at least from newspaper reports. I do not want to go into the conduct of the battle because the fog of war is so much. To really decipher and discern and then try to make our conclusions based on these newspaper reports would be very wrong. But at the same time, the steel plant at Azovstal, which has been what we call invested from all around, and there is panic, literally panic. It could be a biological laboratory, it could be a headquarters of the NATO. US must be having a secret place there with a couple of senior officers and officials and scientists and generals already there. And all that has to be seen as the times go by, and hence I would not like to comment on it. Now, coming to sum up, the political objectives were very, very clear. That is the capture of Donbas region. But how progress, how he has to be made, has to be seen, and also to deprive Ukraine of the Black Sea coast. If you really see, he has already captured Kherson. After Crimea, he has come out and Kherson. Then he has to go further and occupy Odisha. So if they occupy Odisha, the entire coastline is in the Russian hands because Crimea they already captured. It will make it a landlocked country in no time. So the criticality for Zelensky and Ukraine and NATO should be the Black Sea coast first. Second, Donbas region, yes, stiff resistance is there. And he has also what you call, he is trying to advance to a defensible line, which in the later part of my discussion, I will tell you what could be a defensible line. Now coming to, yeah.
No,
you can tell.
Nice. I actually just want to ask you, the moderation that you've spoken about, and we also see, they've pulled back from the Kiev area. We've also seen in the northeast, they've, literally abandoned the places that they had captured next to Kharkiv.
Yes.
Has this been moderated due to Ukrainian defensive, or is it something that they had planned?
See, this, I will not be able to give you a correct reply on this. This is the thing troubling not only you and me and the entire world, but it is, I feel, what Russia has done is not a correct thing because it gives a moral victory to the Ukrainians. Yeah. Especially withdrawing from, they could have put minimum force levels and kept a threat to Kiev alive. And it should also, Kharkiv is a Russian, majority are Russians. It is got around 1.4 million population in Kharkiv. They could have also retained Kharkiv with minimum for defensive forces. But why I think they have withdrawn is for some other reason. For me, it could be well-planned operations in order to see. Actually, Russia is lacking in the combat force levels at this point of time. It needs much more force level at its major objectives, that is the Donbas region, in order to advance right up to Dnipro and Nipir, and Dnipro, and then come, Dnipro you call it, D is silent, and come right onto the eastern bank of Nipir river. They have to come. And also from the southern side, see the eastern Ukraine is like a bulge.
Correct.
When it is a bulge, it is easy for an offender to pinch the bulge away by thrusting from the north, from three directions, from the south and from the east. That's what he has to try. But for that, major force levels are required. As per me, whatever reset which he has done, whatever withdrawal which is there, it is a planned operation. There is no use fighting in Kharkiv and losing troops, or fighting in Kiev and losing troops, when their main objectives are not there. And their main objectives, already the things have been given. You can't keep a deception long for 4 months. Whatever deception you want to tell about your ground objectives can be done in first 1 month, 15 days, 20 days, 30 days. After that, whatever your hands are revealed. Once your hands are revealed that your interest is in the Donbas region, then to waste your force levels in others, may not be required. That's what I feel is the Russian overall design.
It kind of makes sense when you draw it out like that, sir, because when the convoy was standing in front of Kiev, everybody said this city is gone, and nothing happened. I mean, this city came out pretty much unscathed. So the Russians have really, really, flipped all the predictions about this war on their back. Probably, I don't know why, but they've been able to do that. So,
Yeah, yeah. I will deal with exactly what you said. That is what is deception. A
absolutely.
60-kilometer convoy need not be on a road, armored and mechanized columns. They are meant for broad advance, going away from the axis on a broad front, taking on attack vectors, destroying targets, air raids, air strikes, then drones and UAVs and RPVs feeling targets in different directions, destroying them, and then rolling across with such wide momentum in order to come to Kyiv. But nothing of that. They are telling you, yes, we are out here. It was a show of force rather than an application of force. That's what I feel.
Interesting, sir. So a lot of people have questioned the fighting capability of Russia and the Russian military itself. It's not that they don't have their hands dirty. They've fought a lot of wars in the recent past 20 years, if you look at it. Campaigns in Chechnya, a campaign in Georgia. They've been the soft annexation of Crimea was done, post which they've been involved in Syria. Whatever the objectives Russians have actually set out for themselves. I think in the past about 50, 70 years, except for Afghanistan, they've been able to achieve military success in pretty much all their campaigns. When we see that with the conventional fighting which is taking place in Ukraine, what do you think, sir? Have they forgotten how to fight, or is there a need for review of conventional fighting, as you brought out in the introduction itself, that wars are dragging on for 8, 8, 9, 9 years? Which one do you think is working in this particular way, sir?
Yes, sir, that's interesting. Aadi, firstly, Syria, Ukraine. These are all Syrian was a purely airstrikes. There were a jamboree of forces. The US was also fighting a proxy war with the Free Syrian Army.
Yeah.
Those are the rebels trying to put a democracy movement there. Then there were ISIS and ISIL also. Then there were Kurds also. To destroy the Kurds, Turkey also joined in. The American and Western forces were favoring these Free Syrian forces. Then the Gulf countries joined in support of US and the Free Syrian forces. Then there was Iran, which was promoting Assad. And then the Russians joined. And Russia, that insurgency or democratic, so-called CIA-inspired democratic movement started in 2011 in Syria. And up to 2017-18, Assad still survived in spite of the opposition from all these countries. So Russia did a tremendous and marvelous job there, let me tell you. No questions asked. But now coming to this, I strongly feel the very content. See, there might be better plans in the Russian mind. I can only comment of what I see. I hope I am wrong. I could be wrong. I should be wrong. But I want to give a comment on this. Let's say Gulf War I. Before the ground operations began, the preparation of the battlefield by the Air Force took around 5 weeks. No ground forces came. It was only air which was pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding, destroying targets after targets, the missile centers, the artillery centers, the network centers, command and control centers, whatever defense potential, communication heads, roads, railways, bridges, in order to paralyze the entire country into submission before the ground forces came. Do you know that? Now take the Gulf War II. Though here the preparation of battlefield did not take place in order to keep a surprise in mind. It was on 20th March 2003 or something, the second Gulf War started. But within first 6 weeks, there were 41,000 air sorties by the coalition forces on Iraq. 41,000 sorties within 6 weeks. Whereas if you see here, there was no preparation of the battlefield, no air force which came and isolated Ukraine. Actually, Ukraine should have been isolated physically from the aircrafts, no airfields. It declared a war zone. Any aeroplane, international flight, civil flight which comes at its own peril. Seeing that all the bridges and the road communication going to Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, Slovenia, and all should have been cut with wherever bridges are there. That entire this area and isolated electronically, isolated financially, no financial by cyber warfare. All this and destroy their TV stations, destroy their communication centers, jam them so badly that Zelensky in his headquarters is only able to speak to his runner, office runner. There should be no one. That should have been the way. If Russia wanted to put a full-scale thrust of its cyber and all combined because conventional wars are there. But before conventional war, you have to make your target right for a conventional war. Because now you are talk of hybrid war. What did Estonia in 2007, I think? Russia paralyzed the entire Estonia when they wanted to move that Second World War Soviet memorial from the main capital outside. So that is the capability of the Russians. But why the Russians did not isolate the entire supply lines are coming, airfields are landing with arms from NATO, 30 odd countries, entire Western Europe, that missiles, ammunition, artillery, everything, ammunition is landing, supplies are landing. Why has it not been? It actually deters me. Probably, this is again my hunch, that the Russians were fighting a limited war. It actually thought that we'll soon wrap up the operation and the whole thing will simmer away and we have finished, we have achieved our political objectives. Actually, you should have pulverized the entire area. If you see Ukraine, the Dnieper River divides the Ukraine between east and west. You can divide the country into two by destroying all the bridges on the Dnieper River and have air patrols seen that no communication takes place between the two. Physically, you could have divided. So, as rightly once you had mentioned earlier to me, it was not a full-scale war which Russia was really is doing. It was only a special military operations which it thought probably will serve the purpose. What went wrong there? The entire economic might of US and the European powers is behind it. Zelensky has nothing to worry. Billions of dollars are flowing in. He has nothing to worry of fuel, oil and all. That is also flowing in. He has nothing to worry about ammunition, arms, and though weapons may not be the first grade, but all the weapons what he requires is coming. Even the switchboard drones, which is the most recent drones, which are what you call suicide drones, have come to him. Switchblade drones have come to him. So he has to no worry of economics. He has no, except that he is ready to get his civilians killed because collateral damages is taking place. Actually, Russia has been very mild. If you have to destroy cities, let us say, how do you destroy a city? You destroy the communication center, the railway facilities, the airfields, the water resources. You can play hell into a city and get thousands and thousands get killed. But that's not accepted in the present day standards. And Russia is doing it. Probably, as you said, a new way of fighting conventional war is not going for the cities. If you're going for the cities, who can administer a city with a hostile population? I think Kiev has got a hostile 4 million, 3.8 million people live in there. How can you control 3.8 million people? Instead of that, they could have gone to the airfields. They could have their oil reserves, their central banks. They could have gone and taken the gold from the central bank. All these industries they could have damaged. So there are a number of things which it could have done, but it has not been done. So Russia has been quite restrained in these operations. That is mine. And the conduct of conventional battle, of course, frankly, conventional battle does not have an answer for capturing the big cities unless the people are friendly with you. 1965, when we went up to Lahore, we did not touch Lahore. Who wants that? But in 1987, I think we went to Sri Lanka and captured Jaffna and administered there because of friendly population. Again in 1971, we went to Dhaka. We went inside and we got friendly population because of that. But your population is not friendly. To enter into a city and fight from one building to another would be absolutely foolish. And the conventional wars will not be able to, do not have an answer to it. We have to find some other center of gravity of a place in order to strike and make the enemy put the enemy into submission.
I think that's something that rings a bell when you talk about cities like Fallujah, cities like Raqqa, cities like Mosul, which are down to the dust. Exactly. And the battles took years and years and years and years, and even now there are pockets of resistance in some of these cities in in the erstwhile ISIS regions. So there is a quite a this thing flip-sided version of having military force and still not being able to capture a certain city. So, the Chinese concept, let's look at that, and everybody thinks about that as the future of warfare, winning without fighting, gray zone, sort of hybrid operations, breaking the back of the enemy before. And you've also hinted about this in your previous answer, that how do you isolate a certain country, cut them off completely with regards their connect with the outside world, which makes them a little more vulnerable. A lot of people today are questioning the relevance of such actions because they didn't see Russia being a superpower in this gray zone sort of a game as per the West. They didn't see any of that happening. Cyber attacks were at a minimal. Ukrainians are using all sorts of, stuff to put their narrative across. And the Russians have basically just ignored all that. How do you read this entire thing, sir?
Aadi, that also surprised me. Rather, I have also been watched regarding why Russia has not really employed its full might. There are one or two reasons behind it, as per me. Firstly, it is not a direct war. Russia is facing the entire West in this war. If you think it's not a Russo-Ukrainian war,
no.
It is a Russo-NATO war with the entire Europe and so-called democratic world, other than few of us, have joined on to the West. The entire economic might is there on the other side. Second, entire financial might is there on the other side. Entire technological might is there on the other side. And anything what they do, let us say they do a full-scale cyber, you can expect 30-odd countries doing cyber warfare against Russia as well. Can Russia really handle it if going for a full-scale offensive? The entire, and also the cyber war, there is no accountability. You can use a technological prowess of Germany by sitting in Malta or or in some African countries, and then also. So there is no pinpoint in who has done it. Let us say the 30-odd countries of Europe and NATO, Canada, everyone combined, Australia, everyone put. I think Soviet Russia will, I always told, the Russia will not have a real answer to this entire thing. So it is again and again I am trying to tell assert from my point, I am getting confirmed convictions by reading that Russia is fighting a limited war and not a full-scale war which it is capable of fighting, firstly. Otherwise, destruction of cities, actually they have done nothing. Couple of civilians have died, 100, 200, 300, 500, 600. Whereas if you put one mother of bombs in the sky, straight away the 10,000 will die without going nuclear. But they do not. Russia has been very moderate in its application of force levels. Now, when you come to the hybrid, see, hybrid and fifth generation is same. That you use proxy war, you use space war, you get cyber war, psychological warfare, media warfare, financial warfare, economic warfare, isolation, everything what you can do is what you call before and also during the hot war. But when you talk about the gray zone warfare, I slightly disagree with the general perception. Gray zone warfare is what Americans and NATO did on Russia for the past 30 years. What is it? When they told you will not advance even 1 inch to the east, they kept on advancing. Now, you know, there is something called as NATO partnership of opportunities. NATO partnership of opportunities is a first step before becoming a NATO. And do you know who are its NATO opportunities countries? Georgia, Ukraine, Finland, and Sweden. In addition, Jordan and Australia. So there are 5 countries. They have already come all the way. If Belarus had joined, there was nothing left with Russia. Now Ukraine has joined. And the Black Sea coast, Georgia is wanting to join. Finland and Sweden have applied for membership. So who is eating into the comprehensive national power and weakening a country geostrategically by gnawing at all the neighboring countries and swallowing them into the fold of NATO? Who has done it? This is called as gray zone warfare. That is the threshold before you enter the hot war. How to denude the comprehensive national power of an adversary by biting into his entry in his periphery, cornering him, isolating him financially, economically, diplomatically, scientifically, raw material wise, and then. So the real gray zone warfare has been applied and fought by the Americans. That is my first point. Now coming to what was another intention of America. It has 3 goals in Europe. If the NATO is not there, Europe doesn't care 2 hoots for US. European Union is a force of its own. How do you keep the entire Europe under you? By only NATO. By talking about the non-existential threat right from 91. By telling that there is a threat, there is a threat. If NATO would have been dismantled, there will be US 1 power center, Europe 1 power center, Russia 1 power center, China 1 power center, and possibly India 1 power center. To keep Europe down, NATO is essential. To keep Germany, which had fought 2 wars, cause of the 2 First World War and the Second World War, keep them down, NATO is essential. Keep Russia down, NATO is essential. To see that there is a division between Russia and the rest of Europe, NATO is essential. 40% of the European oil and gas comes from Russia. You see that this supply line is cut off, then the entire oil and gas of US will flow into Europe at a much costlier rates. It wants to replace Russia, and there is a division between Russia and the rest of Europe in order to isolate it. So this is the gray zone warfare which US has tried. This is always gray zone warfare is still up to the threshold of hot war. Just at the hot war, they come back and say, we are not involved. Why, how did it happen? I'll give you one more proof. When Russia amassed its troops on Ukraine, Biden, if he was a strong strategist, should not have given up his hands, I will not send US troops to Ukraine.
Yeah.
He first committed strategically and gave Russia a free hand that I am not getting involved. He should have kept it, though he had, because he was already fed up with the Afghan war, the Iraq war. They were just Yemen war, the Syrian war, the Baghdadi and all. I can understand that they wanted to not commit anymore. But why commit it so early and give Russia a free hand to go into Ukraine by trying to say that the US and NATO troops will not come to the aid of Ukraine? So he doesn't want to step into hot war. And that is called as the gray zone warfare. This entire hot war which has taken place is to the successful conduct of gray zone warfare by the United States of America.
True, sir. That I agree with. And the funniest part about the entire thing is Biden literally giving a green light to Putin about, no opposition sort of an attack in Ukraine.
No, I am not coming. You go ahead. It literally means that I am not coming to defend him.
Absolutely, sir. And it would have had a big perception in Putin's mind. He would have played these mind games for another 3, 4, 5 months and probably left, and the war wouldn't have happened. So for my next question, I'd like to, just place a short apology I'd like to give a little bit of a context with regards to this question. A war has to come to an end. We know in 1962, when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, the Kennedy administration, and as a matter of fact, John F. Kennedy, has been recorded in saying that we need to give a face saver to the Russians. You cannot humiliate them. You cannot, put them down because they're a superpower. Don't do that. It will just create into more trouble. And he was able to give that face saver to the Russians. Today, when we look at that sort of a situation, that opportunity to give a face saver to the Russians, no matter what the situation on the ground is, either ways, is not being seen at the moment. Now, why I say this is, one, President Biden himself said it's going to be a long drawn out war. The Russians might keep on saying that the negotiations are not happening and this and that. And the other side actually involves Finland and Sweden into NATO, as you also just mentioned. And of course, are providing training to Ukrainian troops in Poland and Germany. That means to say that the whatever troops, the Ukrainian losses at the moment are hardcore. These losses will be compensated for by the fresh troops, which will, probably get trained and come inside. So this is just going to go on like a chugging machine. Where is there an opportunity to have an exit strategy or a face saver for the Russians and the West, for that matter?
Frankly, that's a good question. Kennedy gave a promise that we will not touch Cuba.
Yeah.
We will look after the defense of Cuba. We will not attack Cuba, provided you withdraw with the face saver.
Yes.
Due to which Khrushchev had a reason to withdraw his missiles, because he has ensured the security of Cuba. Which is his satellite country. But firstly, I do not give that much of wisdom to Biden. I might be wrong, but I do not give that much of wisdom to Biden. Now, the Biden and his cohorts are the hardcore type of people who want to weaken Russia, had the region and his earlier times had done with the Soviet Union. They will feel that they will weaken Russia with a long, prolonged war, with all the financial sanctions, economic sanctions imposed on her. And also, even let's say the missiles which Russia is manufacturing, cruise and all, the number of components come from Europe as well. It's not. Now it's not. It is not Atmanirbhar means every equipment you will invent every week. Huh? So the all machineries are coming, all equipments. There are many things. So if you really able to isolate Russia, it would be a difficult time for the Russians. So I do not, and also Russians have come out. I don't know whether you know what has happened financially. Financially, there is a what we call entire. There is a in a crucible. There is a what you call a boiling pot of financial things. Mutation is going to take place.
Mhm.
Now, Russia has done a very smart thing because their 690 odd billion dollars have been stuck up due to that they are not able to operate in the SWIFT financial transactions. But Russia has proved to be much smarter. Already 10 European countries have decided to deal in rubles. In early 1970s, dollar de-linked from the gold backing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, gold was backing. And thereafter, US started printing dollars without the backing of the dollars, with gold, backing the dollars with the gold. So it kept on printing and became a superpower. And all were having confidence in that dollar, due to which the dollar became the most preferred and running international currency. Now, he has done a fantastic thing which Putin has done. He said, I will only accept payment in rubles. And he has pegged the ruble to the gold standard. He has told 5,000 rubles is equal to 1 gram of gold. So now you don't have to worry about the strength of a ruble because it is paying you 1 gram of gold. Earlier, if the ruble was only a paper currency, then you are worried about storing it. As India, let's say I have 10,000 rubles. I know that I can buy 2 grams of gold in it. He has pegged it to the gold standard. This has happened. Now, the entire financial system will get divided. One is the gold-backed rubles, and one is the green-backed dollars, where there is no, where the gold prices would be wavering. So Putin has found that he has found an answer. Now he is $600 billion. He will buy gold out of it from international market under pseudo names, and he will accumulate that much of gold within in his physical gold in his Russian banks. And then you will have so much of backing to trade with dollar across the world. So this particular small event has been literally left United States flabbergasted. So I don't think US really wants this war to end. It will keep on feeding Ukraine. As someone said, US will fight till the last Ukrainian is dead. Yeah. So that is what is going to happen. Now, let us say it is in the interest of Russia to have an exit strategy. So in order to have an exit strategy, it has to also train. It is not going to do the proper isolation and destruction of bridges, isolating Ukraine from the rest of this one, because it do not want to raise the stakes so high that that an opinion NATO comes to a conclusion that will also militarily come. So he had warned them, I will use nuclear weapons if you fellows join. So it doesn't want to raise the stakes so high. All it wants is to capture the Donbas region on the level of the Dnieper River, and that goes further into the Russian border, the eastern bulge. It will take taken the Mariupol. It has taken Crimea already. It has taken Kherson already. It will extend its operations to Odisha, and then have a defensible line on the eastern portion, and then call for ceasefire. This is not going. It will take some time. Russia will get more forces. and then probably do this. And then tell, yes, I have achieved my military objective of liberating the Russian-speaking areas of eastern portion of Donbas, and also the entire Black Sea coast of Ukraine is with me, along with my own. And here I have nothing against Ukraine. We can be friends.
Would Ukraine agree to something like that, sir, with a whole bunch of new troops coming in?
But I don't think in any way Ukraine will have that much of offensive potential if Russians are really determined to hold on. If you put then the onus of escalating further into the war after ceasefire does not lie with Russia, it lies with Ukraine.
And the world will stop it.
Then it will use all the might. Now the onus of stopping the war is with the Russians. When Russia says we'll have peace, we'll negotiate, that's what foolishly the Indian government did in the 1947-48 talks.
Yeah.
With 1/3 of the J&K in the Pakistani hands, we bid for ceasefire. But such foolish governments at that point of time, if they offer ceasefire, the onus of starting the war lies with the Ukrainians and lies with the NATO, lies with the US, that I am offering to discuss this issue with the Ukraine. They are not ready for peace. This is a bit what we call internationally, this won't be accepted by all when a country is asking for ceasefire and talks, that you are not even ready to accept a ceasefire and talk. So the entire tables are turned. Russia is an offensive person, to the Ukraine as an offensive person.
That makes a lot of sense, sir, because at the end of it, Ukraine is fighting not with his own money. It's fighting with someone else's money. The minute the money gets cut up.
Money, ammunition, weapons, everything. Food. Now they have got some food. If there is a war on, I don't think that Dnieper River can produce that much of wheat as it was before, when it is peacetime.
They themselves are saying, so they're going to lose 70% of their production.
Exactly. And oil, it has to come.
That entire...
So there is lots of problems. So first is physically, Russia has to gain certain tangible objectives, as I have said, and hold a defensive line which can be defended along the river, along the height. They have to see on the ground. And say, now I ask for ceasefire and negotiations. You can't even say no negotiations, because in the negotiation, for all you know, I may pull out. So Russia will say, you are not even ready to negotiate. What can I do? I will hold on.
So there's just two things before I come to your thoughts as a fighting army person and a general for that matter, to come and tell us how they could have done this better. I'd like to ask you two questions that just prompted up with your last answer. There is a river, Severodonetsk, that the Russians are trying to cross. For the past about 3 to 4 days, they've been trying to do this. Ukrainians are trying to counterattack on that river. That seems to be one of the objectives, because the entire Russian fighting line currently just borders that particular river. And it's supposed to be one of the, crux points of that entire region. Point number one. Second, they wanted to, as per the Russian sources, they wanted to streamline some water supplies for the, Crimean region from that lake in Zaporozhye. And they also wanted to get some certain supplies from Nikolaev, which they have captured already the outskirts of that city. So they are very incrementally moving forward, knowing the Russians and the kind of stuff that they've done in this very campaign. When they came into Kiev, they literally took over large amounts of land within a short matter of few days. Why do you think they're going so slow?
See, firstly, the entire Crimea, the land connectivity and the water connectivity is through Ukraine.
Yeah.
So on 24th of the operations started. By 26th, they had ensured the dam which the Ukrainians had built in order to deprive water to Crimea was removed. Means they had already reached that point. Because that was very critical for agriculture, irrigation, for drinking. That was the only freshwater source that has been done. Now, regarding its political aim, see, it did not want to show its objectives right at the early part of the campaign. So they put sizable forces on Kiev in order to start the offensive and to mislead the entire NATO and entire world and Ukraine in particular that the main thrust was towards the Kiev. Whereas their main objective. So now they are getting more troops from Kiev. Troops have joined. Now from what's the another city where they are withdrawing now?
Kharkiv, sir.
Kharkiv. From Kharkiv, the forces have joined. Now they will go very, very incrementally and consolidate. See, it's just not rushing at a place. Actually, 400 kilometers of the border from Kyiv to Belarus is nearly 400 kilometers. They came within 8 days, as you rightly said. Can you beat it? On 1st and 2nd of March, they were already on the outskirts of Kyiv. Now they are doing, I think they are doing very deliberately. Frankly, I still feel, I strongly feel that Russia is not doing a fast operations. It is taking care of the civilian casualties. It is going with lot of restraints and deliberations in order to capture an area which can be captured and held, and then negotiations can take place. See, its aim is very clear. It will get the Black Sea coast. It's already, after capturing Kherson, Odessa is just around 200 kilometers away.
And they already
And they will take a defensible line out here also. And that's what. I don't think they really want to do a very quick job. They will do deliberately. And secondly, if I may say so, that's my personal. I think the Russian forces need better training and greater quantum of infantry and armor. I think the operations have slacked down due to the inadequate thrust and momentum which they can sustain in their offensive operations. I think the troops have to come. See, in a battle, when the battle progresses after first phase, the next phase of fresh troops, resources, RT, ammunition, everything should be there in hand. When these fellows go and further expand, the next lot has to be ready. It's like a war machine where the troops, materials, resources have to be fed incrementally in order to keep the momentum of the offensive going. When each person's come in, they do their job and fellows come and do their job. I think that logistic backing and combat force levels which are required in order to hold a defensive line, which will be from north to the south, will be nearly around 800 kilometers of line.
Yeah.
How can you hold 800 kilometers of line to hold against the enemy offensive if they go on offensive? You need considerable force levels. Ukraine is not a small country. It's a big country, and right up to Odessa, if you see, it needs 1,000 kilometers of defensive line which they have to hold. You can see the amount of troops which would be required. Capture this line and hold on.
It's flat.
So I think relatively flat land, they have to depend upon these water obstacles and all in order to find a naturally defensible feature in order to hold. And further north, the Dnieper has gone towards the west. They have to find some flat land, the road surface or something like that in order to hold, isn't it?
True, sir. Because they are capturing every day. They are capturing certain cities and towns and stuff like that.
Very slow. It will be the operation because it's not easy, and I really feel that amount of troops level and fresh troops which they have to get, that momentum has died down.
Sir.
That's my impression.
Sir. Now, sir, I'd like a little more of your impression just to close this very interesting discussion. I think, let me just say this. This kind of a detailed discussion has not happened in India about this particular operation. I've been watching this and various aspects of this for the past 3 months or 2 months, 2.5 months since the time this has happened. Thank you, sir, for that. But now I'd like to ask you, if you were in charge of the Russian operations, sir, you had Ukraine in front of you with the force levels that you had, with the capabilities, and of course, not to forget the civilian population that you're trying to liberate, if I may, put it that way. Um, what would you have done? How would you have opened this attack, and what would you be doing 3 months down the line?
Okay, let's say right from the start, if I have to say, I would have had and advised the political objectives to be specific. If you have too many political objectives, you want to deter, let us say, you want to deter Ukraine from joining NATO. You can't capture Donbas and tell don't join NATO. Rather, it will force him to join NATO earlier. So when you have your political objectives, you can't have a multiple political objectives, which one will make him react differently, which is against the other. If I have declared LPR and DPR both as sovereign state, will he be deterred from going to NATO for help? First thing he will do is to jump into the bandwagon of NATO.
He tried.
Isn't it? Yeah. And there was a Minsk agreement too also, which promised autonomy for LPR and DPR. Minsk II agreement, which was not agreed by anyone, which did not really get effective on ground.
Yeah.
What I would have done is, if thinking that proper preparation of air battle, the isolation of Ukraine from air, land, sea, electronically and all, which I was capable of doing, that there is certain political limitations were launched on me, that these can't be used. And you have to do a limited operations. The first thing is, when you went on an offensive into Kyiv, and when the Zelensky told, I will be a neutral, I'm ready to be a neutral. That is the time the nail had to be struck. Okay, be neutral now. Let's run for situation. I will not advance. Once your main aim is that they should not come till here, then you have to negotiate on the autonomy of LPR, DPR, and all subsequently. Alternatively, if politically I was given a free hand to do that, then I probably would not have gone so deeply into Kyiv and so deeply into Kharkiv. I would have kept my forces along with Belarus forces in reserve, kept my threat to the Kyiv and Kharkiv alive, and put the major forces into the bulge where I wanted, and wrapped it up with the adequate forces, with momentum, with speed, using all the force levels which were available. And then I would have done it. Means my main thrust here, by employing for a month lot of forces on Kharkiv 2 months, and on Kyiv 1 month. You wasted a lot of time and resources which otherwise would have been employed more usefully on my thrust to capture the Donbas region. That's what I feel, whatever I feel. Because your main objective has to have the main force. And once that objective is revealed to the enemy, it's no point trying to deceive. Go with all your might and capture it with speed and momentum. To do that speed and momentum on the main objective, Russia is lacking force levels now. Because of its preoccupation with the Kyiv and Kharkiv.
They were probably namesake objectives that the Russians had kept for them as a, trophy.
Yeah, they wanted to have a diversity, but the diversity took too much of force levels, which denuded forces on the main objective. That's what I feel.
So, thank you, sir. I think, you've given us a very, very clear perspective of what is happening on the ground, and it's not something that you hear within India. As I said before, the whole objective of Russia, which is coming out, as you very, nicely brought out, after about a month and a half of going through the war, the objective was actually clarified to most of us when we realized, okay, that's Kiev is not the main thing that they wanted to get. It's something totally different. And that understanding is far and few between, if I may put it that way. After that, I think you've brought it out very, very well about the gray zone operations that the NATO has been doing, and they are still doing with Finland and Sweden and stuff like that, which is going to create a whole ruckus of problems. And that's something that we can discuss another day, because at the moment it's not that hot. But the whole analysis that you've put out on the Russian operation, the Russian military, and their capabilities has surprised us. Let me assure you this, because we all expect the Russians to be the namesake of what they carry, the mighty Russian army, and that's a namesake that they've had for decades now. So that's something that I think a lot of us did not expect to see it in such a, I won't say bad, but I wouldn't say very strong position. What they're doing today is as per what their objectives are, and I personally feel that what you mentioned about creating a line and then calling for a ceasefire, something that we should see in the next, about with the current speed, about 30-45 days. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
Yes, I think so.
Thank you so much once again, sir. It's always a pleasure and learning experience to talk to you, to listen to you, and to understand a thought process which, uh, to me personally, I've learned a lot today. It's something which is very, very unique to this entire game and this world today. I didn't think that we would see a long drawn out war, which is coming up close to 3 months. Of course, as you mentioned in one statement, that this is not a long war, it's a short one, considering 8 years, 10 years, 12 years that has been spent others. But on that, sir, till next time for another subject, another day, and an incisive analysis. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Aadi. Pleasure being with you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.